Hello, welcome to African Security, the program that looks into the issues of security here in the diaspora and beyond into the African continent. Courtesy of Africans in London TV. My name is Temitope Olodo and I'm your host on this program. I will be looking in depth into the issue of security as it affects us here in the diaspora and back home, in motherland. The last segment we actually looked at the issue of security, looking at radicalization, funding, proscription of some African terrorist groups, by the United Kingdom. Now we're actually going to go in depth into why we are getting these concerns, or why we are really having these concerns of our youth and Africans in the UK getting actually involved in extremism. We're going to be looking at that in this segment. Do not turn the dial. Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking in depth into the issue of why Africans in the diaspora are attracted to religious radicalization. Now, this is a serious concern because the old generation had a different slang, or a different phrase. They say, when you're in Rome, you act like the Romans. But that seems not to be the watchword for the new generations now. They actually have a different approach. They have a different set of thinking and ideology driving them. And what we've noticed within the last few years is that a lot of Africans or African youths are actually getting involved in religious radicalization and extremism. And we really need to look into why this is really happening. Now, there are about 4 different reasons or assumptions that have been tested by different schools of thoughts, and I'll be looking at each and every one of them. So the first one is to do with foreign policy. There is that school of thought that believe that the foreign policy of Western government, the United Kingdom inclusive, is responsible for radicalization in our community. So there are people within our community that have concerns about Western involvement in Somalia, involvement in some parts of Africa in terms of taking our resources back into the Western world. Some people are concerned about the way Americans is getting involved in the issue of the Middle East and the UK's involvement there. As you know, Tony Blair is actually one of the key people there that is involved in negotiation. And there are people that believe that we should just leave the Western countries, leave the Middle East, or leave some of these areas to govern themselves. Stop interfering. And that's part of the problem, that the policies they have is biased towards Africa and the Middle East. And as a result, a lot of people, a lot of these youth and individuals that are vulnerable get drawn into having extreme or violence, extremist ideology and getting involved in these kind of issues. Now, let's test these assumptions. Now, there is one thing for the United Kingdom and other Western countries to have a policy. There's another thing for our government, the African government, to actually take up this policy. Now, 20, 30 years ago, when countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya were getting their independence, they had the opportunity to become the India of this world, as they are now, or the Singapore or Brazil, because they were countries that were developing, and all these countries have actually taken shape and move forward and achieve a lot of things within the last 20 to 30 years, while African countries have not actually moved up. There are many reasons for that. Some of the reasons is the lack of strong institutions to be able to drive forward the necessary change that we need. Some of the challenges is as a result of corrupt individuals. Some African leaders and some politicians have more money than some states, or some countries in Africa. Now, this is one of the reasons. I'm not saying, and I'm not standing here to defend Western policy. All I'm saying is that it is both ways. As we used to say, there is no smoke without fire. So some of the assumptions that foreign policy is actually responsible for the violence thoughts and this radicalization can be faulted, because some of these youth or individuals do not actually understand international politics and how these things work. And that's one of the major reasons that is always given for people wanting to stand up to go, to Africa to get involved in, violence, extremism, and to be radicalized by people involved or trying to radicalize or recruit them for this kind of dangerous and diabolical activities. There's also the issue of hate preachers. One of the things we found out is that there are, within our community, some preachers who go about to preach things that are not acceptable, things that they can't actually point out as being a reasonable argument for civilized people to put forward as a proposition for whatever they are proposing. I'll give you a classic example. We have people, and the Muslim community have already dismissed the issue of using jihad, to fight, the Western world and setting up the caliphate and things like that. And we also know that in the Congo, and some East African countries, there are some preachers that go about to talk about beating out witchcraft from youth. This is taking religion to the extreme. You've all heard of stories within the newspaper where people have beaten their kids to death or injure them, and feed them with all kind of things, asking people to eat grass, casting out demons and things like that. And there are moderations. They will of course, quote the Bible or quote the Quran to justify the reasons why they're doing what they're doing. But what they're doing is, keying into vulnerable individuals within our community, and preaching these diabolical messages to them. So there are people within our community who are preachers or ministers, if you want to call them that are going about, doing this, proclaiming or preaching these messages that are harmful to individuals that are vulnerable. And what we need to do is actually look out for those kind of individuals in our community where we know that people are preaching things they should not be preaching. Then we should be challenging those narratives and saying to them, this is not what we believe to be the right thing, and not just sitting down there and accepting it for what it is. There is also disintegrated families that is disintegrated. Now, when there are challenges in the family, individuals in those family look for other units that could accommodate them, a shoulder they could rest on. And this is where groups that recruit for Al-Qaeda, that recruit for violent terrorist cells actually get involved. So they give them money, they talk to them, they preach things to them that are not actually right. They indoctrinate them with different extreme thoughts. And we need to look out. There's nothing wrong in charity, and I more or less, I'm encouraging NGOs or what we call charity organizations to be set up to provide meals to support families that are in distress, especially now during the credit crunch, where people, where salaries are not going up, but the cost of living is going up. We need people within the community that have got the ability to be able to support other people, to support them. But what we need to look out for are signs of people that are actually abusing individuals that are vulnerable. So individuals, again, individuals that have challenges, and those challenges could be to do with drugs, and because they got challenges of drug, they are vulnerable to be recruited by extremists who go around looking for vulnerable individuals. At this point, let's go for a short break, and when I get back, I'll be sharing more on all the other assumptions that I believe are responsible for this religious radicalization and extremism in our community. Thank you. Welcome back. In the last segment, I before the break, I actually did talk about some of the challenges that we have in the community in terms of some of the assumptions, and I touched on the issue of foreign policies of the UK government, Americans, and other Western countries, which many have attributed to the growth of religious extremism and radicalization in our community, and I felt we need to touch on that more in this segment, because some of the issues here are quite puzzling, because people talk about being oppressed, and I've highlighted before that the corruption of some of our leaders are responsible for the lack of development in our community rather than the other. But of course, if there are concerns about, foreign policies, there are other avenues through which, these concerns and grievances could be addressed in this community. So you've got your member of parliament that you could write to express your concerns, and those concerns could be tabled in the House of Parliament as a PQM, that's during the debates, or the member of parliament could write to the department involved to ask questions on your behalf. And those are the kind of things that we have here, which in some of our African countries are non-existent. The other things that people say they are suppressed, they are not allowed to be able to express some of their concerns. But I point to that. I differ on that. I feel that there is opportunity for us to excel here. There is opportunity for you to improve your skill set. There are organizations that are supporting within the community for you to be able to improve yourself, improve your skill set, set up a business. And that's why we have this segment, because we'll be talking more about some of those areas and how you'll be able to get in touch with people and be able to improve your skill set. And let me go back to the issue of hate preachers. And we need to identify them in our community, because they do exist, and we know that they are there, setting up little churches or setting up little mosques, and doing little things, and not engaging fully with the wider community. And we need to start looking out for those kind of signs and actually speaking to the appropriate authorities on how to comb them in and ensure that those kind of groups are disrupted. And at this point, I also like to talk about peer pressure group. Some of the reasons for radicalizations that we're seeing now is that people want to belong, they want to be part of a group, and that's why we've noticed a growth of gang crime within London from black communities, and that's because people want to belong to a group, and they want to be recognized and noticed. And we need to notice this. We need to talk. I know things have changed. In the time of our parents, the mother used to be able to stay at home to take care of the kids, and they don't have to work 9 to 5 and things like that. But nowadays, the mom is not at home, the dad is not at home, and as a result, the kids are left, to do whatever they want to do. But there are opportunities for us to put our kids, arrange for our kids to be able to be a member of groups, Boy Scouts and other groups within the community that could be of help to them. Now, apart from that, there is also the issue of unemployment. There is high unemployment within our community, and as a result, kids, and youths, or individuals that do not have anything to do, getting involved in things that they should not be getting into. So as a community, there are a lot of things that we could do, and I'll be talking about that. Now, some of the issues that we could be looking at is how, to build up our community groups. We have a lot of community groups. We have the Kenyan diaspora, we have the Sudan diaspora groups, we have the Nigerian diaspora groups, and they have a lot of professional groups also within those groups. And we need to start mentoring our youths, mentor people that are out of work, people that have lost their job, help them to be able to get loans, help them to be able to upskill themselves so that they could become profitable members or valuable members of the community. Mentoring is one bit that I feel that we need to do more about. There are a lot of people out there that do coaching sessions for free or mentoring sessions. We need to be able to tap into that for people that we know are going through hard time. We need to be able to help people within the church, within the mosque, because these are our first point of contact because of the kind of community we come from. We have family values and things like that. So if you notice people are becoming more isolated to themselves, we need to speak to them, we need to call people up, we need to bring up that community spirit and get involved more in those kind of things and ask them what they're going through, point them to the right direction so that they could be able to get support. There are also government agencies that are willing to help people that are going through hard times, and if there are people that have not committed any crime yet but are moving towards that pathway, because radicalization is a pathway. There are stages to radicalization. So when you notice those triggers, so you notice those things that I've mentioned throughout this segment, people isolating themselves, people expressing extreme thoughts, then we don't really need to just challenge them alone. We need to bring them on board, and introduce them to organizations that will be able to support them, because what we don't need are bad eggs within our community that stain, the whole community. We need to start looking at how to address some of the challenges in our community by ensuring that people with extreme views do not have a place, but we could always debate with them. Now, at this point, I think this is the right point for me to talk about how you could get involved in this program. There's so many ways you could get involved. We could develop brands for you. If you have your own business, you could promote yourself on this segment, but you could also sponsor this event. And when you look at the screen, there will be an email there for you to get in touch, and somebody will definitely call you up, to be involved in this project. Remember, we are here for you because security is important. Your security, our security, the security of the community is important. Stay tuned, and God bless you.